Hey there, my birthday is coming up soon. On the 17th of June, I'll finally turn 22, and what I want to do is a little birthday P.O. box video.
Wow!
So if you want and can, send me something cool. The address for the P.O. box is on the screen right now and can also be found in the description. Now, Nintendo is quite an interesting video game company. When they make a game, they always try to do something new. A great example of this is the Super Mario series. Here to create something completely new every time. Just compare Super Mario Galaxy to Super Mario Odyssey. And while this goes for the games in general, they do the same with enemies seen in these titles, although I do have to mention one important thing. While they try to make every enemy interesting, they don't always succeed. Not all of them are interesting or even that creative. However, regardless of that, I still love them because I would rather have a game that's new, refreshing, interesting, and creative than one that does everything right, but is just plain and boring. But some of those enemies truly stand out, and today we will talk about those. To be more specific, the top 8 most creative enemies I have ever seen in the Super Mario series. So let's dive in right away. Number 8. Now we will start this list with an enemy that isn't very well known and was only seen in one old and quite obscure game, Super Mario Bros. 2. This title is weird in a lot of ways since it's not really a Mario game, but a skin of another title. However, we do see a really cool enemy in this title, the Mytoes, who have one simple role in the games, guarding keys in caves or in jars. That's it. Now, when you enter their lair, they will stay still and are harmless basically. But all of that changes when you take the key that they are guarding. Then they wake up and chase you immediately without stopping. They will follow you through other screens and rooms and cannot be permanently defeated. Only if you drop the key, it flies away and will leave you alone. But if you pick it up again, it will come back. To be honest, the only way it will give up the chase for good is once you use the key to unlock the door. Now, personally, I love these because they seem so harmless in the beginning and get hostile as soon as you take their treasure. It all reminds me a bit of an Indiana Jones-like trap that you trigger and then have to run away from. It works well, and for the time, it was really original and a fun idea. So it deserves to be on the list. Number 7. Now for our next enemy, we are going to look at one that's actually incredibly famous. All of you have seen it at some point. But when it came to the 2D games, Nintendo had to alter it in some way. Otherwise, it wouldn't really work. And the solution they came up with was pretty creative. I'm talking about the big Whomps when they were first seen in New Super Mario Bros. For the DS. They are a large-sized species of the Whomp and are rather rare, only being seen a handful of times in the games. Now in the 3D titles, they just fall right on top of you and that's it, being able to do so in literally every direction. However, it isn't that easy in a 2D world because movement is limited. So how they ended up solving this is by putting them on the sideline of a stage and only letting them fall towards you, the player behind the screen. This way you can see it the best, and it also allows you to use them as a platform, which is really cool and also brings something new to the table. Personally, I love what they did and it works out rather well for them, making it all a good example of Nintendo solving things in a very creative way. Number 6. Now for our next one, we will be looking at an enemy that was once used in a really odd game that was specifically made for the Game Boy, Super Mario Land. The foe that I'm talking about is the Peon Pie, which are zombie-like enemies which are based on the Jing Xia, a mythical vampire and zombie-like creature supposedly originating from Chinese folklore. And what they will do is constantly try to jump on Mario, and they're hard to kill because jumping only stuns them. Now the reason why I like them is because the folklore that inspired them is interesting and refreshing, since back in those days Nintendo rarely did stuff like that. Aside from this, the way they attack and move was also really odd and special compared to all the other foes seen in the game, really making them stand out among all the others. So even though they were limited a lot by the hardware back then, they still found ways to make the enemies special. Number 5. Now we finally get to an enemy that was seen in Super Mario Odyssey, which are overall excellent, but mostly when you become them. Because a lot of enemies in the game aren't really fun to fight. They are only great for capturing them and then using their powers. However, the Sherms do not fall into this category, because they are also a ton of fun to take on in a battle, both as a tank yourself or just as Mario. They can be beaten with a ground pound or a shot fired by a captured Sherm, which you can do with Cappy now, allowing you to aim its cannon and shoot things with it. Now the reason why I like these so much is because it's both fun to be one and also fight them, which is rarely seen in Super Mario Odyssey. It's always one or the other. To be honest, it's one of the only criticisms I have for Super Mario Odyssey. But in this instance, it's a ton of fun to fight a whole squad of them like it's some sort of tank minigame from a Mario Party title. It's genius, to be honest, even though they have done something similar to this in a lot of spin-off titles before. I mean, they made a lot of minigames around this concept, and now in Super Mario Odyssey you can create some sort of shooting courses, which is an element rarely seen in a Super Mario game. The closest things to it are probably the auto-scrolling sections from Super Mario Land. So it's cool that they brought this into the modern era, finally doing something new again. Number 4. For our next candidate, we will look at quite a special boo with powers that will surprise almost any player. And they even came up with this stuff a long time ago when technology was limited and the Super Mario franchise was still really young. I'm talking about the Stretches, who first appeared in Super Mario Bros. 3, which was made all the way back in 1988. If you attempt to pass them, it will rise from the top and bottom of the platform and attempt to hit you by moving from left to right. So they're basically boos stuck to a platform, and every time Mario comes around, they pop up from the floor and try to get him. A bit similar to ghost movies where they randomly appear out of walls and rise up out of the floor from below. You know, like Casper the Friendly Ghost or random villains from the Scooby-Doo movies. You get what I mean. Personally, I love this because it surprises players most of the time, while also acting unlike anything seen in the game. To be honest, it makes sense to add such a thing to a platformer game, but they could have done this in other, less original ways as well, like some pressure-triggered spike trap, but that's quite boring and has been done a million times over, and this hasn't. So great work, Nintendo. I love it. Number 3. The endless world of space. A place so big that you could encounter almost anything in it, which gives game developers a lot of options, to be honest. And in Super Mario Galaxy, they went all in with it. And there's one enemy that did something special, the Spring Topman. It tries to attack by spinning at you and then crashes into you. But if you try to stomp them, something interesting happens. Its head will pop up, immobilizing it, and a second stomp will spring Mario up for a jumping boost, which you can use to your advantage in order to reach high ledges or items. While it's a small touch, it's really cool and makes them more than just some enemy to take out, which also allows Nintendo to do more with them, making them part of the platforming in a way. And it does a good job at this. So personally, I think it's a great addition to the game. Number 2. Now we are finally back at Super Mario Odyssey, because I got to be honest, there's one more enemy in the game that's very special in my opinion. It does something that I have never seen in any other franchise before, and even the Super Mario series. And that's because it's weird, but in a good way, just believe me. I'm talking about the Mytoes, which are steaming lava-filled tomato-like enemies who roll towards you and may even bump into each other. Sounds quite harmless, right? Well, no, because it's a trick. A very clever one, because as soon as you attack them, they do something completely unexpected. They totally burst apart when hit, and create small pools of lava which become off limits to all creatures but the lava bubble. So if Mario touches it, he will certainly take damage. But when you capture a lava bubble, you can leap on top of those enemies to turn them into puddles of lava, and use them as an improvised platform. So even from a platforming gameplay standpoint, they do something cool. But personally, I like the surprise of a sudden lava pool popping up even more. It's cool and it's truly new to the series, even the whole genre as far as I know. So clearly, Nintendo hasn't lost their touch yet. Number 1. We are here, the one enemy that is the most creative in the entire series. A foe that I never expected to see in a Super Mario game. And funny enough, it was seen in the very first 3D title, Super Mario 64. Because here we come across the most surprising enemy ever, the Mad Piano, which looks normal at first, but when a player approaches the instrument, it begins to open and close its lid, revealing sharp teeth. It then proceeds to chase and attack while making awful noises, making it an incredibly terrifying experience to encounter one of them. Also because it's impossible to defeat this enemy in any way, despite the Nintendo Power Player's Guide stating otherwise. Now, as we all know, this enemy was extremely scary back in the day, and also a huge surprise for almost any player. And it's also crazy creative. Who would have expected something like this when the game first came out? Exactly! No one! And that's why it 100% belongs to be on the #1 spot of this list. No one saw it coming, and there wasn't a developer on the planet that had made something like this before. Also, if you want to help me out, be sure to subscribe, click the bell button, like this video, and leave a comment. Nice or naughty. And then I will see you in the next one.